Hello, welcome back to Fosseway Classic Car Workshop. My hobby is classic car restoration, as you can see here, but my day job for the last 24 years has been as an engineer at Jaguar Land Rover. In that time I've met a lot of really intelligent and interesting people. So in today's episode I'm going to talk to a friend of mine who's a vehicle dynamics engineer. So they're the people that tune the steering, the ride and the handling to give the car its inherent characteristics. Obviously, because I've been restoring the rear suspension on this car and I've got the front still to do, we're going to talk a little bit about that, but also his career history at Jaguar Land Rover and what he's been doing since with the Alpine A110. I'm joined by my friend Dave Pook, who's a vehicle dynamics expert, and we're going to be talking about his career at Jaguar Land Rover, what he's been doing since he left, and we're also going to be talking about the IRS, the inherent rear suspension from this car. How would you describe the role of a vehicle dynamics engineer?
Well, I'd always describe vehicle dynamics as like it's about vehicle in motion, it's about the vehicle driving down the road and the vehicle is reacting to what you as a driver ask it to do. So your inputs of brake, steering and throttle, you ask the car to do something, but equally the environment pushes back in the other direction. So the car goes over bumps and there's wind and there's other things. So the things conspire together where the car's got all of these inputs to it. And it's about how you want it to go about its business. How do you want it to react to when you ask it to do something? Does it steer intuitively? Does it take the line around the corner that you asked of it? And that's not about going as fast as you can.
Do you remember that Alfa Romeo 156 sport wagon I had years ago?
Yeah.
I remember going out in that with you once and you were kind of checking whether I was kind of correcting mid-corner and stuff like that.
Yes, and sometimes you do it unconsciously. So, you could be, you're just getting from A to B and you have to negotiate a corner. And subconsciously, I turned and the car turned more than I wanted to do, so I turned back out and then I had to go back in, So you might not be aware of that, but you might think, I don't really like it that much, but I'm not sure. You don't necessarily assess it.
Yeah.
Is the way I would describe it. Whereas, my job is to make the car do good things.
Yeah.
And people's good and bad can vary, but if the car did do that and it took 3 stabs at a corner, then my job would be to stop it doing that and make it do one intuitive turn into the corner, as one example.
Yeah, okay.
And when people say, well, what is it on the car that affects vehicle dynamics? And the answer is everything. The mass, where the mass is, the suspension, the tyres, it all conspires together to make that vehicle behave in a certain way. So you have so many levers to pull, and you have to understand all of those things.
And people do dedicate their kind of life's work to it on a career basis, don't they?
Yeah, I think vehicle dynamicists are slightly weird engineers.
Yourself included?
Yeah, absolutely. I've wanted to do it since I was 12 years old, I think.
What got you into it?
Radio control cars.
Radio control cars.
So my dad brought back a radio control car from Japan. We built this sand scorcher, Tamiya sand scorcher, and you're filling the dampers with oil and the suspension's going up and down, and you can see it all in front of you, and I was just fascinated by all this. And then as I got into it, I was fascinated by the fact that this little car could behave differently depending on me changing things on the suspension.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I thought, I was like, wow, And then I got into racing them and competing with them, and then you have to make a radio control car be set up well in a competitive way because you have to go faster than other people, so you have to then know how to make the radio control car suspension and vehicle dynamics work. And when I was only 15, 16 doing that, it all relates. It's just a small...
you can scale it up.
It's a small thing. Yeah. The physics is the same. So, before GCSE, I wanted to do vehicle dynamics. So GCSE, A-levels, degree was all steered towards doing vehicle dynamics as a career. And I went on to do an MPDS, a graduate training course where I said, I'm not touring these departments because they're a waste of time. Put me in the vehicle dynamics department. Which was
right.
And so I've been doing it ever since. And I know many other passionate vehicle dynamicists who are no different. And if you say, why do you love vehicle dynamics? We just do, and it's what I want to do. So that's why I call it slightly weird, because absolutely obsessed by it.
It's a vocation. It's a kind of calling almost.
Yeah. It's weird. So I'm just fascinated by it, really, and still am. And you learn something new every day. There's, if you ever think you know everything there is to know about a certain subject, whether that's vehicle dynamics or something.
Yeah.
You never do.
No,
You're always learning, and I have an inquisitive curiosity, I guess, and I always want to find out something new.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, it means I get maybe bored quickly.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm always going to find the next little interesting thing to learn about. And I think that's part of doing vehicle dynamics, because the subject's so massive.
Yeah.
That you'll never complete it. Never. Obviously, suspension is one of the major influences in vehicle dynamics. Of course, it is.
Yeah.
So that's where most of the focus goes, and I lump wheels and tyres into that because that's where most of that car to road interaction comes from.
Yeah.
And it's also the driver to car. You steer the car, don't you?
Yes.
And you press the throttle and you press the brake, and that's how you make the car do things. So they all interact through the suspension, through the tyres to the road. I guess that's about as succinct a summary as I can do, really.
No, that's it. Well, it's a complicated subject.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
In terms of the projects you worked on at Jaguar Land Rover, what are the most kind of noteworthy projects that you'd tell us about?
I did 19 years, which is a long time in kind of vehicle dynamics. I started it.
You don't look at that.
Thank you so much. It's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Thank you. But no, so 19 years, and I started at Jag before Jag and Land Rover joined together.
Yeah.
So I started off doing a little bit on X-Type front-wheel drive, but then also S-Type, which was a 2002. 2002 S-Type was like a completely different car underneath.
Yeah, moving away from the Lincoln underpinnings, yeah.
So a lot of work went into that. I did the S-Type because I'd always had that performance interest, so I was like, please let me do S-Type.
Yeah.
So that was a cool project, and then we did the XJ, then XK came along in 2006, X150.
Yeah.
We went down the aluminium road. I was building up that knowledge. I went and did Range Rover Sport in 2006-07,
Oh, okay, yeah, T5, so L320.
L320 Range Rover Sport. That was, that made Land Rover a lot of money, that project, because it was, it was popular, but it was, efficient to make from a cost perspective.
Yeah.
And just grew from there, and I started to have people work for me. I did a stint as technical specialist. We developed new metrics to kind of like measure cars from a vehicle dynamics perspective. So, it's quite wide-ranging for a lot of time. Latter part, I did the SVO projects.
Right.
So a team of people in SVO doing the vehicle dynamics of those. So the SVRs and the Project 7, Project 8.
No, those are pretty illustrious projects and very, pretty special cars.
Yeah, JLR for a long time. I always had that keen Jaguar interest because of cars and performance. So SVO was actually slightly founded on the fact that we did an XKRS-GT, a little known project where we kind of proved almost to ourselves and to the business that we could make a performance car.
Right.
And then that gave permission for Project 7 to come along.
Right, okay.
Which was like the launch of SVO. It was like a major design exercise as well as having the performance to kind of back it up.
I think it's fair to say that in terms of kind of how those cars handle, steer, ride, it's got your fingerprints all over it.
Yeah. For those two projects, XKRS-GT and Project 7, there was a tiny little team where, I was going to Nürburgring a lot and doing a lot of the work. When we did Project 8, it was a much bigger ambition.
Right, okay.
And a much bigger team, because the content in that car is incredible, really, for taking an XC to a Project 8. The content in it is massive. But also was the ambition. It was like, people said, why did you make Project 8 out of an XC? And actually it was about the performance targets.
Right.
So it was, we want to make a car that's capable of XYZ in terms of performance and how it drives.
Yeah.
And XC was a better donor platform than F-Type.
Right. So lighter, more aerodynamic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
I remember driving one of the, I've never driven a Project 8 other than one of the, in fact, the very first prototype of that. And it was, it was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, F-Type, everyone loves F-Types, great car. The platform under the F-Type is still from 2002. It's 20 years old. XC is a much more modern platform, so you can get much more from it. Like, we're going to make a Project 8 that can do all this stuff, and people are like, well, it's got 4 doors, that's a bit weird. And then it turned completely around, so it's got 4 doors. That's mad, isn't it? So let's do it. I think Project 8 was one of those great kind of projects because it had so much freedom of very much target driven. We need the car to achieve these things. Therefore, we need this content. We need to change these parts. We need these tyres. We need this suspension.
Yeah.
And everyone went, okay. Is that all? They said yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we went and did it. You know.
Yeah.
So I think it will grow into a cult car even more than it.
Yes.
You know, it's one of those cars where it launches and everyone goes, "What's that?" People just love the fact that it exists and it was wacky. You know. So you know that's kind of like the freedom I had towards the end of my career to go and do those things.
Proudest moment?
Probably the reception for that car. Not in print, but being on the launch. You know, so we've done Project 8 and we're in Portugal at the launch where you get the media and journalists in to drive the car, and actually you get normally there's like a relationship where you're giving them a car and say go and see what you think, but you're not expecting feedback because they've got to go and write a story, and if they don't like it, we're going to come to say that car's terrible, mate, and then walk off. You know, so normally you know there's like a relationship there of you go and support and they go and drive the car, and then you wait to read what they think.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
And Project 8, that didn't happen. It was like a slight, I guess they wanted to like it, but it was like they couldn't believe how good it was and just spat it out. It was like, this is great. You've done a great job. It's amazing. You know? And so you get the feedback, nice. You know, to the team of people that were there. You get that feedback straight away. Yeah. Good reviews are fine, but actually now I probably understand more than ever that customer feedback and customers enjoying their cars is more important. If you develop a car and launch it and you get a 5-star in a magazine, that's nice. Yes. But it's not the reason for doing it. Yeah. Because if no one bought it, or if no one out there, like, you know, as a business, it doesn't mean anything to anyone, you know. Yeah. And so, you know, so I think as your career goes on and you grow older, you understand that more and more. It's about people who have bought the car or enjoying it, and they own it and they enjoy owning it. They're actually the more important things.
So that brings us neatly to what's the logo that's on your shirt there in Life110. So yes. What happened?
After a 19-year stint, corporate life I'd had enough of it, and I always wanted to do something for myself. And business was in not a good place financially, as in general. So I took a voluntary redundancy package, which gave me an amount of money, which I worked out could, you know, support myself for X amount of time. And then Alpine brand had been resurrected by Renault. My dad was always interested in Alpine in the 80s, which I thought was fine. But actually, the reason I was so interested in the A110 as the car as they launched was because it was a 2-seater sports car, which was interesting, but it weighed 1,100 kilos, which in the modern era is
nothing,
unheard of. You know, so Project 8 was a 1,750 kilo performance car. So you know, I was like completely hooked by.
You were hooked by the concept before you drove one.
Yeah. So without wanting to name drop, it was actually Harry Metcalf, because he was working with SVO as a consultant at the time. We were having a chat in the canteen, and he said, "Oh, have you know about the Alpine A110?" I was like, "Oh, a little bit." And he goes, "I weighed it. It was like 1,100 kilos," and I was like, "It's amazing," you know. And it was that conversation which made me think, that's so different. What is that like? So I started to weigh. I researched about it, and then I just decided that I could afford to spend some VR money on financing an Alpine A110 with a slight view of maybe I could do something with it using my tuning experience from SVO, you know. Yeah. But I paid for it before driving it.
Right. Oh, okay.
So I took the decision where I'm not gonna test drive it because I'm buying it regardless. I have to know. Yeah. So I just bought it. Right. And then picked it up.
Okay.
And then because of the vehicles that I'm assisting me, where you never drive anywhere, you only assess cars. Wherever you go, you're assessing a car. There's no, you know. So I'd gone to pick the Alpine A110 up, and before I got it home, my mind was going, well, maybe you could just tweak the geometry because this bit of the steering could be better.
Right, okay.
So
like that.
Yeah, so I was like, well, I don't like this bit, because I've read a lot about it, and I was like, well, this isn't, for a car that doesn't weigh very much, so I thought this bit of the steering could be better, and that sort of thing. So the thoughts were there. That car is like what I would. It's slightly Reston moddy in its ethos anyway. It's 1,100 kilos, but it shuns, high power. It shuns grip. It's quite relaxed and soft in its suspension, and it's about usability. So, I've done I've still got it because it was the foundation of the business. I've done 30,000 miles in it now.
Oh right, yeah, it's just outside. So
it's 30,000 miles, and
come rain or shine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm by no means the highest mileage car in the UK. There's people out there done 45,000 miles in theirs.
Yeah.
Because you can't stop driving it. It's so useful. It does everything. I take it to Sainsbury's. I do the school run.
I've seen you at Sainsbury's.
Because it's small, it goes anywhere, it's quite comfortable. Other than storage size, that's the only limitation. To answer that 1,100 kilo question, within 50 yards, you steer left and right, and you're like, "What's this? This is, it's like slightly joyous. It just it just moves. It just changes direction. So I ended up starting like a social media Instagram account because it was like a new car. No one else has got one. This could be fun. My life with an A110.
Right.
And then when I couldn't help myself, but I started to think about tweaking it. I'm going to do the geometry, and I'd just like it to be different in the way it drives around that corner. So
you didn't think, I'm taking this car away from standard, it might affect its residual value or anything like that?
No. Just it's partly I wanted to do like what I wanted from it personally. Yeah. But then at the same time, I'm thinking commercially, is this a product I could sell?
Okay. So did that come after you got the car? You didn't buy it thinking of doing that?
I bought it with a thought that it might be possible.
Okay.
But having never driven it, I didn't know.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so many people said, why are you tuning an A110? Because they're low volume and they're 5-star cars. There's nothing for you to do.
Yeah.
People thought I was mad. They probably still think I'm mad. But so it kind of like born out of that, really.
Yeah, okay.
Because I've got a following on Instagram, Life110 became the name because that was my Instagram name.
So where did you start then? Was it that suspension tweaking that kind of your
I did what I knew.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. I knew how to develop a new spring, get the ride I wanted, change the geometry. I knew how to engineer and deliver that. Okay. So I went and did that, and then I had a lot of help with foundation of branding, as you know, not just developing a product and saying please buy it, but actually putting across what Life110 means and what it stands for. So everything I do is engineered properly because of that engineering background. Yeah. You can see a lot of stuff that goes to market where it exists because someone made it. Yeah. Whereas everything I sell, I've tested on the car. Yes. Absolutely everything has been engineered to the way in which I think it should. Yeah. And then I've tested it, and then if it hadn't delivered what I wanted it to, we've gone and tweaked it. Yes. So you've got an Evo 5-star review at least once, I think. Yeah. I've been in. Well, it's back in the magazine this month, aren't you? It's in Evo magazine for the third time in an iteration. So your car's basically a reference car for others to kind of, it's a chilling bar. That's right. Yeah. So I'd each time they've asked me for the car. Which is like I'm fortunate to have, because of my JLR background, supporting media work. They knew me. Yeah. I'm fortunate to be in that position. So you branched out from just suspension parts. So what kind of things have you developed on the Alpine as well? There's now like a range of suspension parts, doing some carbon fibre aerodynamic things, different wheels and tyres, tuning the engine, doing like intake hoses around the engine. Didn't I see one video where you actually noticed that there was no visible compression in some of the intake system? Yeah, but on a gear shift, because it's a DCT gearbox. Right. So when you pull a shift, the vacuum, as it's a turbo engine and it pushes boost back to the intake, the vacuum pull collapsed the intake hose, for example. So that can't be right. Well, I guess it depends how durable the hose is. My mind says over time that has to degrade. Yeah. He's doing that all the time. Yeah. So gone for silicon hoses, change the shift paddles on the steering wheel to like stuff that we designed. So it's like a package of parts. It's all about maintaining the original ethos of the car.
Yeah.
I want to retain that A110 character and then just improve it.
So have you got many more things under development for the A110?
Yes, because the brand's grown into now a commercial project. Is how I earn money. So there's always, and there's more and more cars being sold. They sold like 12,000 now. So the customer volume is growing all the time, and I ship worldwide. So there's always that balance of things that are going to be good commercially versus things that are always about making the car better. And I'll never sell something for the sake of it. I won't do that because I think that the brand is too important now. And more and more people are going down, are kind of like using them for track days. It's interesting because A110 was shunning track day performance at launch.
Oh, okay.
Whereas now people are taking advantage of the potential of the platform.
Yes.
It's such a great suspension and understructure. It doesn't weigh anything, so you can put performance into it.
Yeah.
So my car now has like a track style coilover suspension on it and cut 2 tyres and big wheels and the aero package.
It looks fantastic. It really does.
Thank you. Which of course is much less about driving it every day.
Yeah, okay.
So
and so have you got different setups for road and track?
Yeah, that's
okay.
right. The idea being that, depending on what the customer wants to do with their car, they can pick and choose how they can build it together.
I have to say, I was going to take you for a ride and spin my S-Type that's outside, because shortly we're going to be talking about Jaguar rear suspension.
Yes.
But I ought to be pestering you for a ride in yours, to be honest.
Yes.
So we'll sort that out in a minute.
Absolutely.
Is anyone else actually kind of offering anything like the A110 at the moment? Because lightweight sports cars of its type are kind of, there aren't that many out there.
No, I think it's the last of its time. I was with a owner customer this afternoon, and he's actually cancelled his order for the new Lotus Emira. He's keeping his A110 because it's like the Emira's a 50 kilo car, and the A110 is almost more Lotus than Lotus.
Okay.
So he's keeping his A110 on the basis that no one's ever going to make another one.
Because one thing that struck me with that car is when it came out, I remember reading the kind of very favourable reviews, and it came from nowhere. It's very unusual to get a kind of a rejuvenated brand that comes at something and literally knocks it out of the park. Because generally it tends, generationally, you get a really good one. And, look at BMW and Mercedes. They don't always hit the sweet spot, and they occasionally have a cracking car. This one seems to come from nowhere. What do you put that down to?
I don't know. I don't. It's one of the things that happens, isn't it? Sometimes
alchemy.
Yeah, planets align, and all of a sudden, this car exists. So it was done by a small team. I've now have gotten to know some of the original engineers of the car. It was done by a small team, small budget. Interestingly, there's a parallel with some of the Jaguar SVO stuff.
Yes.
And by that, what I mean is that when you're engineering a car for the masses, you have certain processes and criteria that the car has to meet.
Yeah.
When you're doing an SVO project or a little Alpine A110, you recognise that the way that car gets used in the marketplace is very, very different.
Yeah.
So some of those processes and standards aren't needed.
So you're not constrained by them in the same way.
But it's very, very hard for the business to understand that.
Yeah.
So Project 8 was like, all of these standards, we're not going to meet them. Yeah. It doesn't need to meet high demand use, 150,000 mile, etc., etc.
Yeah.
The car's not going to get used in that environment. So that conservatism of a car for the masses, it will hold you back if you put that into a small volume, small sports car.
Yeah.
So I've learned from the Alpine engineers that they spent a lot of the time telling the Renault board or whatever that it wasn't going to meet XYZ standard because it didn't need to.
Yeah, okay.
And the car's proved it didn't need to.
Getting the big corporate world to buy into that sometimes is a challenge.
Yeah, so it's like a small company mindset in a big company. It's very, very hard to do. And I think they've learned that with Alpine and with SVO. But I think you need that small team, small company mindset to sometimes deliver those extraordinary.
Yeah, well, it seems to have hit the sweet spot.
Yeah. So I
not that it wasn't possible to improve on, of course.
No, but I love the car, I love the community, and Life110 is still about the car.
Yeah.
You know, the car is a star. It's like, sounds slightly cheesy, doesn't it? But it's about the Alpine A110, which is what the common kind of interest is for all the customers. You buy that car because of what it is. You don't buy it because you want the neighbours to be impressed by it, because the neighbour will come and say, "What's that?" You know, it's very, very different in that respect. So
it's an Alpine. It's what?
Yeah, I still get it now.
Right.
I've had that car 3.5 years, and still people ask what it is, and you say it's an Alpine, and then they say, "What's that then?" So
okay.
you have this little explanation. The Formula One branding's definitely helped, you know,
Of course.
But even today, the guy doing the shipping collection today knocked on the door, and he was like, not interested in the parcels. He was like, "You've got an Alpine." And he was like, "I've never seen one." You know, and he's like, "I love cars, never seen one, amazing." So we had a 5-minute chat about the car, and it still happens. I've been stopped in petrol stations for people to take photos.
Yeah.
You know, so it's people who don't know about cars love it because it's small and it's not flashy.
Yeah.
People who do know about cars love it because they know what it is, and the owner community is great. You know, so it's just great to be part of it, really.
Yeah, it's good. Well, you've made a big success of it, so congratulations for that.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about Jaguar rear suspension while I've got you. So I'm just going to move the suspension round so that we can talk about it around here, I think. So back in a moment. So this is the Jaguar independent rear suspension that was first launched on the E-Type and the Mark X back in 1961. I understand some of the basic principles of it, so that we've got inboard brakes and we've got this aluminium hub carrier here to keep the unsprung mass down. Mm-hmm. As a vehicle dynamics engineer, how would you describe what the importance of keeping unsprung mass under control?
Well, I mean, first I'll admit E-Type is before my era, but you know, obviously it's suspension and physics and how it works is all the same. So unsprung mass, because if you think about it, so the mass of the car is supported between itself and the road by the suspension, and then the suspension is supported from the road by the tyre.
Yeah.
So if you have a lot of mass in the suspension itself, the tyre is reacting that to the road, and all that energy goes back up into the body. So, for example, putting it in engineering terms, E-Type will have a body shell. It'll have a natural oscillation of about just over a hertz. You know, so it will be something like once a second. If you have no dampers and just let it oscillate, it'll be like once a second.
Right.
Suspension, as in the unsprung mass, that's about 12 to 14 hertz.
Right.
So it's quite a different frequency. The only thing that's going to stop this unsprung mass shaking is the dampers here.
Right.
But the dampers also trying to do the job of preventing the body shell oscillating.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So in order for that damper to stop all of this unsprung mass from shaking, it's going to have properties that are undesirable for just the body.
Yeah. Okay.
So the lower the unsprung mass you can get, the easier job you're asking the damper to do.
Yeah.
It means you can tune the damper to deal with the mass of the car and the body, and not deal with all this unsprung mass and tyre trying to shake. So, and clearly, you know, Jaguar's reputation for good ride and all their cars, it's something that was part of that kind of like brand value.
Yeah.
So I don't know the suspension, but I can see the steps taken to reduce the unsprung mass with they put the brakes inboard. That's a lot of mass that's come off the suspension. They've saved on parts. You know, the upper drive shaft is the top wishbone. It has a dual purpose. Aluminium hubs.
Yeah. When I took this off, when I did one of these for the first time, I was surprised how little that weighed.
Yeah, knowing suspension, that is a lightweight hub, and it's come off what age is this car? 71?
67.
67 car?
Yeah.
So think of that. So the understanding was there. You know, in the early 60s, the understanding was there about lowering the unsprung mass is going to give you a better driving car, both in steering, handling and ride. So, you won't find inboard brakes these days. mainly from a thermal management perspective.
Thermal performance and servicing as well.
Yeah,
It's just a nightmare.
But it's undeniable the benefit you get of putting the unsprung mass there. A lot of modern performance cars have ceramic brakes. Of course, that's for heat management, but it's also for unsprung mass saving.
Yes, of course.
You take a performance car that needs a large steel disc and put ceramic brakes on it.
Yeah.
It's not just heat capacity; it rides better and it steers better because you haven't got to steer that rotating gyroscopic steel disc. So the principle is the same. People are still doing it.
So I think there's a small amount of crossover of the later generations of this suspension design in your time at Jaguar with XK8 and stuff like that. I think brakes have gone outboard by that point. But I'm not sure. Did you work on any of that directly?
I worked with people that had done XJS and XK8 because obviously this, the suspension type when it stayed in production to 2004-5, wasn't it? With the XK8, so shows you how long it lasted as a concept because it worked, and it's very clever. So and especially dual purposing that drive shaft, you have to. It has the longitudinal link because it has to deal with braking forces and torques and longitudinal forces, but the lateral forces are all done by the lower arm, and the drive shaft provides the kind of like camber control. So very clever when they engineered it for sure. And that's why the car drove so well. Yeah. And also why it lasted so long in production.
Yeah, I think E-types have survived because they're E-types, but it's all the S-types and cars like that where these have been robbed to put on kit cars and hot rods and the like because it's one bolt-on, bolt-off unit. I say about the servicing not being great for the discs, but actually you can take this off the car in less than an hour. Really, it's very easy to kind of drop it off as a unit, just a few mounts, disconnect the prop, and you're off. Yeah. And
the other point I'd make is that this is lightweight for a double wishbone suspension. So this is an independent suspension. It's double wishbone because one of the wishbones is a drive shaft. It's lightweight for a double wishbone suspension, let alone comparing it to the solid axle, live axle cars of the era.
Yes.
So the change from a live axle car to this suspension must have been absolutely huge when it was launched, because this will be lightweight in today's terms, let alone 60s live axle cars. So
yes, very interesting. So my task is now to get the rest of the car to this kind of similar stage. So it's going to take me quite a while. But thanks very much for coming and talking to me about your career, your current work, and on this. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Happy to.
Now to the pub.